Do 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 do. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I should be live now. I'm just moving this around. It annoys me. My bookcase is at an angle. That's a bit better. I'll have to just sit back a bit. Right. Let's have a look. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for jumping in here and joining me for the 51st sleep meditation creation session and the first one of 2021. Anyone who obviously is new here, I spend the first like 30 minutes or so, maybe slightly over that, having a bit of a chat, settling in myself, and then getting ideas from yourselves. And then around past, ideally, I try to aim for past. I will create some kind of sleep meditation with the ideas suggested, or I will stare blankly at the screen if I can't think of what to say. So if you want to skip all this part and you just are coming here to watch the sleep meditation, then there'll be a timestamp after this is finished that I'll put in the description and in the first comment, which I try and remember to pin the comments. I think I always do. So that you can just jump straight to the sleep meditation, whatever it will be. I obviously don't know what it will be yet. Abby has already suggested some ideas, which I've written down with my purple pen because I have added ink to that the other day. Just having a look, see what's written down. Yeah, ideally, I'd rather not be drinking coffee at nearly 10 o'clock at night, which is when I was drinking the coffee. But I have to attempt not to yawn my way through this. I have to try and make sure that I hopefully don't sort of ruin whatever sleep meditation I end up doing. Kind of weird symbol is that? So I'm suddenly discovering new symbols on my laptop. As you know, those of you who joined Abby and myself for the New Year's Eve live stream, I would normally have done it sat right here, but my computer decided to do what it claimed was a 20-minute update. At least that's what it said on the screen. But it said a 20-minute update for a very many number of hours. So it wasn't a 20-minute update. So yeah, I've got my purple ink back in my purple pen, and I got my fingers incredibly messy doing so. But it's in its place. So yeah, that's all good. Yes, Abby had wifey privileges of being able to suggest to me early some ideas in case she wasn't in the live chat. Yes. My fingers aren't purple now. I've washed my hands since, quite a lot actually. But my fingers were purple even when I was washing my hands. The purple ink took a while to leave my fingers. So yes, hello to everyone who's jumping in. There's 15 of you now, which is good. I'm wearing the same t-shirt as I was wearing the other day, but I'm wearing a hoodie over it that I got for Christmas. The hoodie I'm wearing is a Star Trek one. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have refilled it during a live stream. So how this pen works is obviously it's one of those bits inside that you sort of pop out and then pop it in the jar, and then it's got a little plungery bit to pull up, and so you then try and pull up that plunger, and the trouble is that it doesn't reach the ink unless I put it. So the actual plunger bit that I have to grab hold of to pull up to pull the ink up into it um, is inside the thing with the ink, inside the ink container, the ink jar. So whatever you want to call it. So I end up having to get my fingers into the actual ink jar, trying to avoid the edge of it. So it's very difficult. Yeah, I didn't try milk to get rid of it, just soap and water. Yes. I didn't give it mouth to mouth though, because I would have got purple lips. Yeah, I think if I designed it, I would have the plunger bit much longer, just so that I could pull it from much higher up. Because the ink jar, it's a great gift, and the ink's going to last quite a long time. But the ink jar isn't huge, so that's the size of the ink jar compared to a pen. The ink jar isn't huge. It's just that, and I've refilled it a number of times, but the ink is still right up near the top. It's just that the whole thing ends up inside for me to do it. Um, and my fat fingers end up inside the ink virtually. Just reading your comments. Yeah, never tried milk on a t-shirt or shirt. Yeah, I was going to start this stream. I thought, because I've got my little friend up here, spider. I was going to start the stream with the spider on screen, and I thought, no, that'd be mean. People may not like spiders as much as I do. But yeah, so thank you everyone for jumping in here and for joining me on this first one of 2021. I have to keep remembering the date. Not as bad as trying to remember the date when I was actually working, like where you have to write dates on paper all the time. But yeah, I have to keep trying to remember what date we are. Yeah, split second close up and everyone suddenly drops off. Some of you are obviously used to it. Have some water. I'm creaking in the chair. I've spent a reasonable chunk of today working on recording, which is why it's beside me, and why I've needed extra drinks today because of my voice. Recording more of this book to try and get through it. I've recorded up to there now, so I've got I don't know 100 and something pages left to work through. Yeah, I like spiders, and I feel sorry for that one who is in there because it obviously was probably gassed in a forest somewhere for ending up being sold in some kind of resin. Yeah, we had one in the bedroom that gave birth to a vast number of additional baby spiders that I was asked to remove. So I had to try and scoop them up and get them out the window so they can make a new life for themselves outside of the flat. They'd eaten the mum first. So the mum was kind of dead where she had been eaten, obviously, as the last kind of gift to her kids. I don't mind spiders being inside or outside as long as they're not likely to harm me, and so I'm not likely to cause them harm. Um, then it's fine. They've got as much right to be knocking around as I have. They are very interesting to observe. Some of them can be a little aggressive when you get cameras on them. They don't necessarily like that. Yes, fortunately, our spiders here, we have very, very few spiders here that um, are likely to bite in the first place to the extent that you notice, or that are likely to cause significant problems if they bite you. Yeah, I like jumping spiders. Obviously, not if they jump straight on your face. But um, so yeah, so I have been working through for the new channel, the new Vintage Stories channel, reading through the rest of Looking Backwards 2000 to 1887 or whatever it is. Um, I've read, I think, 50 pages today, and have, I think, 130 or 140 pages left. You're looking forward to that. So yeah, 130, 140 pages left to read. And because I want to move on from that novel and onto something else, I'm trying to read as much of it as I can to make a video that has as much of it in one video as possible. Maybe two more videos or something. See if I can get it into either two long videos or one very long video. I don't know what yet. Just so it's done, and I can then move on to other novels. I've got a whole load of the evil hypnotist detective novel things over there that I haven't read. I've obviously got H.G. Wells to read. Um, I've got the Sherlock Holmes novels to read. Um, I've got, trying to think what else, things like Frankenstein and Dracula, which I might save for Halloween next year, this year even. See, I'm already forgetting we've moved on a year. Um, Lewis Carroll, might read some Lewis Carroll books or stories. Then I've got obviously Grimm's fairy tales and um, various other fairy tales and um, just all sorts of things to read. It's just trying to figure out what to read next. But I want to get this one out the way first. Yep, that's a good way of thinking about them. Yeah, Freaky Stein is a good one as well. So yeah, it's just trying to figure out what to read next. Ideally, something that might be popular, so something that people know of. Obviously, I specifically chose this novel when I was reading something first. One thing I didn't realize it was as long as it was. So I'd started reading it, as you know, a very long time ago, privately, and got a chunk of the way through, and it's quite heavy. So I had thought that they are thick pages, but I kind of just felt in my head like it wasn't as long as it turns out that it is. Um, and I wanted to read it because obviously it's about hypnosis, and that was my reason for choosing it. Because obviously I like hypnosis, and I bought it because I like hypnosis, and I like time travel. And so, who wouldn't like a book about someone time traveling from the past to the future through hypnosis? But it's not something that people have heard of, so um, it's kind of. And I'd like to read some Edgar Allan Poe as well, although so that's something else I'd quite like to do. So yeah, so I don't know why I just suddenly thought that, but yeah, so that's kind of why I chose that specific one. Obviously, I'd like to read things like Trilby as well, um, and other late 1800s hypnosis based books that I've got, novels that I've got. Um, but yeah, that's the whole point, is that I want it to be something that is well known enough, um, like Sherlock Holmes, for example, something that's well known enough as an actual story that when I read it, uh, and it's on my channel, it will show up in Google searches because people will actually be searching for it. I'm suspecting the number of people who search for, um, looking backward 2000 to 1887 is a very small number of people, um, that search for that on YouTube or on Google or even on on a book site like Amazon. I'm betting it's not particularly searched for. So yeah, Sherlock Holmes, as you say, probably be good for that. Um, some of the very well known fairy tales might be good for that. But there's a risk that the people who are searching for fairy tales specifically are more likely to be child focused. And yet, if you're reading the fairy tales as classic fairy tales, it's not that they're not what children listen to, because they are what children used to listen to. They're just not what children nowadays listen to. Um, but they're not necessarily what a parent or someone is trying to find. So, reading something like Sherlock Holmes or reading something like, I don't know, a Lewis Carroll thing is more likely to perhaps come up in searches. And then obviously I've got my gaming channel as well. Um, I've recorded my first video for that, which will go live this week. I think it's more the parents think that the content isn't suitable for their children. Um, I know Wind in the Willows and uh, what is it? The Watership Down. Watership Down was on uh, TV. I think it's on it every year, but it was on. I think it was last year, not last year, 2019, that it was on approaching Christmas, and it was trending on Twitter because people felt that it was inappropriate, because it was on like a Saturday afternoon, felt that it was inappropriate to allow something as horrible as Watership Down to be shown without warnings when children might end up watching it, even though it's a U, so universal, for universal watching. It's something that people obviously, and it is a very distressing thing, but it's something that when it came out, it was for children, and it's watched by children. It was watched by me as a child, but it got lots of complaints for it being shown without warning to parents that it was about to be shown. And obviously, the reality is it would have been in the TV guides, and the parents were probably not in the same room as the child who had the TV on at the time. And then the child ended up seeing rabbits being killed, etc., and got sort of sad or whatever. So I think it's more a case of kids are overprotected from these things nowadays, and adults, I think, don't think that kids should watch them. Yeah, but Disney puts fluffy music over everything so that even at the darker moments, apart from some of their older Disney films, I think people don't notice a lot of it. But yeah, so I've also got my first gaming video cropping up at this week. I think Wednesday. I think I've put it down for. Yeah, I don't know when Turn of the Screw was or from. So yeah, so the stories that I read over on the Vintage Stories channel are all out of print stuff. They have to be out of print. If you follow the channel and you've set the bell notifications, you'll get notified. If you haven't set bell notifications, then you won't get notified. So I've already recorded the first of the videos for that channel. It's me playing Mega Man very, 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 very badly. I've not played Mega Man properly. Not that I've ever played it properly, but I've not played it really since, I'm trying to think when, the late 80s, 1980s. So I've not played it for a very long time. And it took me, just to tell you how bad I am at computer games, especially old computer games. There's new computer games, you restart, you can just keep dying and starting again until you somehow manage to get past whatever bit you're stuck at. But it took me 40 minutes to complete one level. And today I have been on YouTube, searched for people playing Mega Man, and seen that most people who play Mega Man on their channels complete it in 40 minutes, literally complete the entire game in 40 minutes. It took me 40 minutes to complete one level and nearly 20 minutes to before I ended up dying so many times that an hour was up and I thought, right, I'm stopping playing now because it's been an hour. So it took me a whole hour to play a level and a very tiny bit of a second level, and that was it. So I'm definitely not very good at playing computer games. But the idea of the channel isn't for me to play through from start to finish of every game that I play. The idea, as you know, is for me to take breaks, and I'm not taking breaks if what I'm doing is trying to beat games that I can't beat, and so I then have to spend hours and hours and hours gaming to try and beat a game that I can't beat. So the idea is that I'm just talking over the video, having a chat while I'm playing, talking kind of about the game, but having a chat while I'm playing. If my audience was able to be free at a time that was more convenient to me, then I'd probably just do it live so that I can do the live chat while I'm gaming. I tell you that it's frustrating, I think. I don't use those words, but I say this is how bad I am. So yeah, so there's the gaming channel, which is Megadan Retro Gaming, which I've shared on the Facebook group and I've shared on here, I think. So I've shared that it's coming. There's the Vintage Stories YouTube channel. So there's the two new channels. And if obviously you want to be notified when things go live, then you'll have to make sure that you've clicked the bell notification icon or at least subscribe so that it comes up in your feed. I'll get ideas in just a moment. So the storytelling channel is literally going to be me just reading novels. And then the gaming channel is predominantly retro gaming, but I might throw in other more modern stuff as well if I'm playing something and I think it'd be interesting. So, for example, I like playing Minecraft, and I don't get to play enough Minecraft. And I know Minecraft is a stupidly relaxing game to listen to being played and to watch being played, as far as I'm concerned. So, I might one day go back to something like Pac-Man. But I've started with Mega Man, and I'll probably start on other. I might start a bit more or move on to a bit more recent and play something from the Super Nintendo or something as a next step. There's also some PlayStation 1 games I'd quite like to play. Are people clicking on the wrong things? So let me get my pen out. Abby has suggested a couple of ideas already. So if people want to start suggesting some ideas, just making sure there's no ink leaking onto my fingers. Tree, crystal, leaves, nuggets, chicken nuggets. Yeah, I most definitely wouldn't be playing Call of Duty. That's one game. Well, that and Battlefront or anything like that. Cactus is something that when I play it online, I don't think I've ever lasted longer than about 3 seconds between being killed. And racing games, if it's got a side that I can lean against, I can't come in anything other than last. So I don't do racing games. I don't do shooting. I'm not really very good at anything, but that's why I like things like Minecraft, something where it's not about killing and not about racing, and there's no competition. Robots, I think that is. Even GTA 5, I prefer to just be a taxi driver in GTA 5 and try and keep out of my way, out of everyone's way. Bookshop, bath. I would see robot and dance as two separate suggestions. If you want me to put dance in as well, butterflies, I don't even know what a pangolin is. Any other suggestions? We've got about, well, not quite, maybe a dozen. Pigeon, rain, I don't see that as a suggestion, or at least I can't see what the suggestion is within that. I assume that's mushrooms. A sunny day. Right, let's get started. We have a few suggestions. Have a little bit of water. That's on and recording. That's good. Just make sure I can read my writing. Move that way a bit, maybe. So I'm not totally blinding myself. Okay, 10:33. Try and make sure I don't make too much extra noise. Okay, don't fall asleep while cleaning in the background as you listen along today. So, just take a moment to allow your eyes to close. And with your eyes closed, you can begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, I don't know whether you'll drift deeper with the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. But as you begin to comfortably drift asleep, I'm just going to tell this sleep meditation in the background. And you find yourself walking through some woodland on a crisp winter's day. And you can hear the sound of the crisp grass crunching beneath your feet. You can hear the rustling of the leaves and the way bare branches knock and rub against themselves as the wind blows a breeze. And as you look around, you can see the different shades of brown of the trees, noticing the bare trees that you can see through to the sky, seeing through those branches, and then noticing the pine trees, still thick with tiny leaves. And as you walk, you can breathe in that fresh, clean air, and really feel that air passing in through your nostrils, down your throat, and then breathing out, really feeling a sense of peace and calm while you're out walking through this woodland. And then off in the distance, in this woodland, you can hear the sound of a fox, and then hear it scurrying around, and the sound like a couple of foxes are perhaps playing. As you continue walking through the woodland, and you feel the coolness, the crispness of that air on your cheeks, while you're wrapped up so warm, so comfortably. And you walk out of that woodland, following this path round, towards a chateau that you're staying at. And as you walk towards that chateau, you can see the name of the chateau, Lalande, as you walk towards it. And you follow the sign, you follow the path, and you pass a wall and start walking up the drive. But as you're walking up the drive, something catches your attention. Just heading around the side of the chateau, you notice the most beautiful swan. And you see its wings outstretched, as if it's almost trying to fly and walk at the same time, as if it's trying to rush around that corner. And with intrigue, you follow that swan. You walk towards that corner. And as you walk around the corner, you see that swan heading across the garden and heading between some bushes. You have this feeling almost like the swan seems to glow, seems to be such a pure white that that swan almost seems to glow. And you cross that garden, you cut between the bushes, and behind the bushes you notice a wall, and it's a high stone wall. And you run your fingers along that wall, feeling those cool stones under your fingertips as you walk along the wall, listening carefully for the sound of that swan, sure that that swan must be back here behind these bushes somewhere. And you can hear your own footsteps as you walk. You can hear the sound of your legs brushing past the bushes. You can hear the sound of the breeze. And then you hear this slight sound and realize the swan isn't far ahead. And so you very carefully and slowly continue to walk along the side of the wall. And then you hear a slight echoey sound in the air that you can hear blowing around. And you realize that in the wall seems to be an entrance, and that there doesn't seem to be anything the other side of the wall. It's almost like it's a cave, as if that area at least is much deeper than just a wall. And so you carefully walk into that cave, noticing the way the air changes as you enter. You get your phone out of your pocket. You turn on the torch, illuminating this space. You can hear the slight dripping of water coming from inside this cave. And you've been staying at this chateau for a while. You've been out for daily walks to the woods around the grounds of the chateau and back to the chateau. You've walked around the garden. You're even sure that you've walked behind this wall, and yet you've never noticed this cave. And you walk deeper and deeper into the cave. And as you walk deeper into the cave, so you begin to notice that you can hear that swan. You can hear that swan walking further ahead of you. And then you notice a slight blue glow coming from deep in this cave. And as you walk further and further into the cave, so you notice blue glowing mushrooms in little clumps along the walls, and some slightly stringy bits of mushrooms, glowing blue, hanging from the ceiling, with the occasional drop of water dripping off of them onto the ground. And on the ground you can see a very shallow stream of blue glowing water, and you follow that further and further into the cave until eventually it opens out into a large cavern. And in this cavern is a large pool of blue glowing water, which is illuminating the cave with the most beautiful light blue glow. And on the edge of the water you can see that swan. And you notice how pure white it is. You notice that its wings seem to almost sparkle as it enters the water and splashes some of that water over its back, ducks its head down into the water, flicks its head back, wiggles its tail as it passes that water across all of its feathers. And the more it does so, the more it seems to glisten and glow and sparkle, almost as if it's covered in diamonds. And then it bathes itself again, and this time it rises up out of the water, stretching its wings out, flapping with broad, slow flaps, lifting its chest way out of the water, stretching its neck, and then lowering itself back down again. And then it washes itself a third time, and this time when it stretches its wings out and flaps its wings, that glowing increases and increases, and the sparkling increases, and it begins to glow brighter and brighter, illuminating this cavern, until you have to look away because of the brightness. But as you go to look back, you're surprised to see that instead of being in a cavern, you seem to be standing by a small lake in the most beautiful land, where the green grass blows in the breeze and makes the sounds of wind chimes and tiny bells as that breeze blows across that grass. And you can see some animals grazing, and with each step they take through that grass, that sound of twinkling bells, the most beautiful, like thousands of bells, just ringing and twinkling at once, like a soft hum in the background, at their footsteps. And you walk towards that lake, and the swan is now just travelling across the lake, just swimming like any other swan would swim in a lake, just leisurely gliding across the lake. And you walk around the lake, and you can see around the other side of the lake, in that grass, is the most beautiful tree. And as you get closer to that tree, you realize that its leaves sparkle and glisten as the sun beams down on it, with dancing rainbow light all around the base of the tree, as the light captures the prism shapes of those crystal leaves that shimmer and shake and move in the breeze. And as you walk through that gentle bell sounding grass, you realize this whole land seems to be a vast cacophony of music that seems to all work in harmony with the nature around here. That footsteps almost sound like gentle drum beats, with their rhythms beating out. And that as animals walk, so the sounds of their footsteps fall into sync. And that even when they start off walking in different rhythms, within a few steps, they seem to fall into the same rhythm and the same beat. And the waves, the slight ripples on that lake, just add the most gentle, synth sounding wave sound in the background that rises gently and falls gently, and rises gently and falls gently. And as the waves are moved by the wind, so the wind feeds the sounds of the trees, the crystal leaves jingling and chiming as that light dances on the ground. And the animals make their sounds seemingly in time with the music. And you find yourself almost lost in the music of this land, almost drifting into the most pleasant reverie in this land. And you walk all the way to that tree, and you relax yourself down on the ground by the tree. And you sit with your back against the bark, and you let your eyes gently close. And with your eyes closed, you can notice that dancing light over your face, over your eyelids, as the sun shines down on the tree. And you realize that almost contained within that light is the sound of the sun, where every colour that light is split into seems to be a separate note that plays in harmony with the other colours shining on your face. And you find yourself resting there, seeing that dancing light through your eyelids, just picking up on a sense of those colours. And as you pick up on those colours, just gently moving across your eyes, you have this feeling almost like the feeling of going down deeper and deeper in a lift. That feeling of drifting deeper inside your mind, deeper and deeper into a reverie. You start having that feeling almost like you're walking down a path into a country garden. And as you walk down that path into that country garden, in this reverie, you can notice the way butterflies dance from flower to flower, the way bees dance from flower to flower, the different birds, seeing the most beautiful golden finch landing on a bird bath, and in quite an erratic fashion, jumping from point to point before ducking into the bath, flapping its wings, splashing about a bit, almost like a blur in the water, before flying and perching just outside that water again, as if to dry off just slightly in the sun, before continuing with the day. And you walk through this garden of the most beautiful flowers, the myriad of smells as you pass roses, as you pass other flowers, as you reach a yellow flower that just has the most incredible scent to it, before passing the lavender at the back of the garden and feeling that temptation to brush your hand along the lavender, and having that lavender scent. And you realize that the way the lavender smells lets you know that it rained not that long ago here in this garden. And you walk through the garden, and you continue walking across countryside. You can see a tiny village off in the distance. And so you find your way gently off to that village, just ambling along, enjoying the environment, enjoying the walk through nature. You notice this same white pigeon just keeps on coming over, landing near you, seemingly almost walking along with you for a bit, pecking at bits on the ground before flying off. And then you're sure a little while later that it's the same pigeon that lands near you again, almost as if it's watching over you and just making sure that you're on the right track on the way to that town. And as you get nearer the town, eventually you find a road, and it's little more than a track, but it's the most road-like thing that you've seen out here. And you can tell that it leads all the way to that town. So you follow that all the way to the town, and notice when you arrive at the town that it seems to be a quaint little town, a really old-fashioned town. And you can see a bookshop down one side. And so you walk down towards that bookshop, and outside the bookshop is a table of old books with their spines pointing upwards. And you run your fingers across those spines. You pick up a couple of those books. You look at the first few pages. You smell the books. You feel the pages. You hear what they sound like to turn before you head into the bookshop. And as you open the door to the bookshop, so it knocks a bell, makes that bell ring, and you're greeted with a strong wave of the scent of old books that instantly gives you a nostalgic feeling and a comforting, calming feeling. And you walk into that shop. And the corridors in this shop, the spaces between the books, are very narrow. There seems to be floor to ceiling books, at least double your height. And there's rows of books in the middle of the shop, books up all the walls. And even the desk may as well have been made of books, with books all up the front of the desk, books all round the side, books piled on the desk, some books piled in an erratic looking style, as if someone had just been reading through those books and dumped them down to hurry to read even more. But everything looked so well looked after. And you followed the scent of the old books, as if somehow you're drawn deeper into the shop, to the part of the shop with the oldest books, and you head all the way to the back of the bookshop. And as you go deeper into the bookshop, so you notice how quiet and muffled the sound seems in here, and how you imagine that if you went to talk, you would probably talk with a whisper, as if somehow that would be what's expected of you, even though it's just a bookshop and there's no signs to say be quiet. And at the back of this bookshop, you find a spiral staircase, and it's a metal, really old fashioned, ornate spiral staircase. And you carefully follow that spiral staircase down into the basement of this bookshop. And as you get down into the basement of the bookshop, so you see wall to wall books down here. But on the back wall, which is the front of the shop, but back from where you are, you can see a cabinet. And in that cabinet seems to be lots of books, but one almost prominently displayed, one on a slight stand facing forward towards you. A large book, leather bound, looking really old, with what looks almost like rivets in that book, and a metal design on the front of the book, as if a lot of care has been taken to make this book what it is. And as you get closer to it, you can see some colour in the cover, as well as that metal design. And notice how well it looks like it's been looked after. And you open the cabinet. You take that book out of the cabinet. And you sit down on the floor, placing that book on the floor in front of you. And you open that book and look at the first page, and the second page, and eventually you find a page with a date, and you see how old that book is. And you're surprised at how old that book is, and you wonder whether you'd be able to even read it at that age. That a book hundreds of years old must be written in a very old version of a language. But you find as you start reading that you can kind of grasp what that writing says. And you start reading that book, and as you do, you begin to have this sense that somehow it's teaching you something, that it's not just a novel, even though on first reading it seems to be fictional. There seems to be more to it than that. It seems to be talking about that swan, about this land between lands, this limbo land where everything consists of rhythms, of patterns, of the underlying waves of the universe, and that you can access that using a specific blue mushroom that can be found only in one cave in France. But that cave was lost to time. And that one cave and that blue mushroom allows you to see the waves of reality as if there's something tangible, turning something intangible into something you can experience, in the same way that your senses can take waves of light and turn them into what you see, can take the waves of sound and turn them into what you can hear. The mushrooms can allow you to enter a state where you synchronize your brain waves to be able to perceive the wave reality that underlies reality. And your brain creates what that experience ends up like for you. And as you read through, you realize that what looks like a fictional novel on the surface describes your experience. But you don't know whether this experience of reading this book is off the back of that wave reality or just a dream, or if somehow you've exited that because you know that this quaint little village, this small town, looks very much like somewhere you've not yet visited while you've been staying in this chateau. And so you suspect it could well be that place, but you don't know for sure. And after reading some of that book, you decide to take that book with you. And you head back and you pay for that book, and you leave the shop with that book. And then you start finding your way back, all the way back out of the town, heading back to that garden. And then you find yourself awakening under that tree before you find yourself walking away from the tree, back towards that lake. And as you walk around the lake, so that swan raises its wings again. And as it does so and starts flapping its wings, it seems to emanate brightness like a bright white light. that's so bright you have to close your eyes to that brightness. And as you open your eyes again, as the light fades, you find yourself back in that cave. And the swan is just going about its business in that lake in the cave, in that chamber there, as you find your way out and back to the garden. And as you head back to the garden, you realize you don't have that book with you. And you wonder whether that was all just part of that experience, and that perhaps that book doesn't really exist. As you walk out of the cave, you cross the garden, you head into the chateau, and in the chateau, you head to your room, and you settle down in your room, lying on a bed, pondering the experience you've had. And that night, over dinner, you tell the others in the chateau about your experience, about this strange experience that you'd had. And they tell you about the myths and legends of this place, things that people used to say existed. And you go out walking at night in the chateau grounds, and it's a cold and crisp night. You can see the blanket of stars overhead, the moonlight illuminating the environment with the most beautiful silver glow. As you think about the experience that you've had, and while you walk around the garden, you head back near that cave, and you see the cave is definitely there. That it's very hidden, but it is definitely there. And you walk in the cave, and everything's as you remember it from earlier on in the day. So you know that that is real here. And you walk around that garden, and then you notice that there's a tree house in one of the large trees in this garden. And you decide to climb up into that tree house. You wrap yourself in lots of the blankets that are in that tree house. You light a candle that's in a holder in the tree house, just having that one gently glowing light in the tree house, while you look out of the tree house up at the sky, out across the garden, hearing the nighttime sounds of nature. And as you rest there, looking out over the garden, you begin to ponder reality, wondering how much of the experience that you had relates to the reality you see, and how much was perhaps just a reverie or something that happened in that cave. And you start trying to make sense of what happened in that cave. You know you definitely went into the cave, but you find everything beyond that difficult to comprehend, and you have nothing to show for it other than your memories. And as you rest up in that tree house, so you feel a deep sense of peace and calm. And then after a little while, as that candle's beginning to burn out, you put the candle out, you head back inside, you go to bed for the night, knowing that the next day you're going to see if you can find that quaint little village, that little town a little way from this chateau. And the next morning, after breakfast, you leave the chateau and you find your way in the direction that you felt you walked the day before. And you realize that it does look like the town off in the distance. And as you get closer, it looks subtly different, but it still looks like the town. And you walk into that town. And there's a few more people here than you saw the day before. And everything looks like this is a slightly different version of reality. But it still seems familiar. And you can see that bookshop at the end of one of the streets. And you walk to that bookshop. And you touch the books outside the shop just as you did in your reverie the day before. You open the door to the bookshop. You hear that bell. You smell the old books. You walk into the bookshop. You walk to the back of the bookshop, descend that spiral staircase. And in a cabinet you can see on the far wall, you notice that book is sitting right there. And you head over to the cabinet. You open the cabinet, noticing the slightly creaking hinges as the cabinet door opens. You take that book out of the cabinet, and you can feel the weight of that book in your hands. You close the cabinet door. You sit on the floor and begin to look through that book. And you realize it is the same book. And you read through a bit further than before. And as you go through, you discover that somehow this book is part of a connection between these different realms. And that you'd come here and access this book while you're in that other realm between realms. And so you take that book, you go and buy that book, leave the shop. And as you walk back to the chateau, you notice that there are dark rain clouds beginning to move in. And back at the chateau, you head back into the treehouse. You wrap yourself in the blankets and you sit in that treehouse. And you start reading that book. And you try and match the book with your experiences. And as you do, you hear those first large drops of rain on the windows of the treehouse, shortly followed by heavier rain. And as you listen to that rain, almost enveloping you, all around you, hearing the sound of it on the wood roof of the treehouse, hearing the sound of it on the windows around you of the treehouse, and the sound of that rain on all the grass outside, and the sound of that rain hitting the trees. You allow that to deepen your experience of relaxation, helping you to focus more on engaging with that book, almost like somehow being able to drift deeper and deeper into the experience in this way, being able to be more relaxed, seems to get you into a certain mindset, almost like a certain brainwave pattern that helps you to understand that book better, as if somehow you're suddenly reading that book across two planes of existence at once. as if somehow the rain begins to take on the sound of music. And then as you continue reading and you approach the end of the book, you notice that the rain begins to die down, and you can see the rain going off into the distance and the sun shining. And you notice the most vivid rainbow forming against the backdrop of those dark clouds as that rain moves away. And as you notice that, so you read in the book that to see the beauty of a rainbow, you have to face away from the light and towards the darkness. And you wonder why that sentence is one of the last sentences in the book, just at the point when that's your experience. And you realize there's deeper meaning to that sentence than just what you're seeing. That somehow that resonates deep within your heart, within your soul, within you as a being. And as that resonates, so you reach the end of the book, and there's the last few drops of fine rain just settling on the grass as those clouds continue moving off, as the rainbow fades away, and the sun illuminates the ground. And although it's generally a cooler day, that sunlight shining on the grass begins to make the most beautiful sunny day, with this perfect mist rising from the grass, flowing out around the trees, and gradually rising back to the sky, as if the water is going home, as if the water has gone on a trip to the ground and is now leaving that ground to travel away again, to continue its own journey. And you notice there's a certain silence, followed by the beginning of the sounds of birds that you couldn't hear moments earlier. And you listen and relax to those sounds of the birds as you descend from the treehouse. You head back into the chateau. And as you walk into the chateau, so you walk into an airy, stony part of the chateau, hearing your footsteps reverberate as you carry that book through the chateau. And then you hear someone walking down the corridor to you. And they greet you and say they hope that you've had a wonderful stay. And you say to this lady that stood there that it's been a really interesting and intriguing experience. You'll definitely be visiting again. And you'll recommend others visit here too. And she's glad that you enjoyed your stay. And you head back to the room for your one last night here. And you put that book on the bed. You prepare yourself for dinner. You enjoy dinner with the others here at the chateau. You regale them with your tales of your experience, and you find strangely that they don't seem to consider your experience particularly odd. They just accept it as one of the unusual things that happen when you stay somewhere like this. And after the most beautiful evening with the others here, you head back to the room. You settle down for your final night's sleep and thinking about the contents of that book and how much learning you're going to do reading that book, processing the information, and absorbing yourself in reveries around that book, and revisiting this chateau again to go and find that cave and explore the cave and see what you can discover and learn, and whether you can find alternative ways of connecting with the true nature of reality, or whether you're going to have to use those mushrooms. And you realize that it must have been because of you walking through the water that had been dripping through the mushrooms hanging from the ceiling, that perhaps there's a slight mist in the air in the cave of that water, and that might be how you ingested some of the mushroom to allow the experience to occur. But you know that you'll explore all that ready for your next trip here in the future, that you've already got a lot to process and work out. And as you think about all this, you begin to drift and float so peacefully and comfortably asleep, knowing you'll be full of energy in the morning, eager to get up, crack on with your day, looking forward to what you'll be choosing to do during that day, looking forward to enjoying your day, finding the moments of pleasure in the day. And as you think about those things, you rest down in that bed, feeling so comfortable, so calm, so relaxed, as you drift and float peacefully asleep.